Thank you so much for being here today. We're super excited to have you. I see you're a Gators fan. I read that you were an alum. So
Yes.
good to have you on during football season. I wanted to just kick this conversation off right off the bat. I know that you are an expert on burnout, what causes it, how to prevent it, what we can do in our daily lives to make that less of a thing in all that we're up to. Or what do you find are the leading causes of burnout, and what do people need to know?
So burnout, of course, is very real. A lot of talk lately, especially with different groups in the workforce about this notion of burnout, because burnout can be caused by a lot of different things. One of the top things that it is caused by is being overloaded and overwhelmed, and oftentimes it's work-related stress, which many of us, of course, can relate to. I can definitely relate to that personally as well, years back when I hit burnout as well, because it really, though, can be prevented when we work on having better systems in place to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves, which for many of us, maybe that wasn't a conversation you had growing up or in your teen years. I know it definitely wasn't for me as far as taking care of yourselves. But the good news now, I feel like, is we fast forwarded to a place where we're having a lot more conversations about self care and mental health and learning the tools that we need to prevent burnout.
So here's a question. I know that we always think about burnout in the workplace, but I feel like it gets overlooked a lot, just the burnout in our everyday lives, like raising kids, like all of their
Yep.
activities, any of the other things we're up to. I know that being based in Florida, you just dealt with two separate hurricanes. What
Yeah.
does that look like in people's lives that maybe isn't discussed as much?
Yeah, it's a lot. So work-life integration, if you will, like you said, with work and with whatever your home life looks like, whether that's with a significant other, whether that's being a parent or having friends and family members, like it is a lot to put all that together. And like you said, of course, for us in Florida, going through two back-to-back hurricanes, it's just like an extra layer of stress. Or I think of when we had the COVID-19 pandemic, which affected all this globally. Like there's just so many different layers, and it becomes more and more overwhelming. It's almost like a snowball sometimes, which of course can lead to burnout when we're not careful of all the things that pop up that we're not expecting in our lives. But it absolutely can have a toll. The good news is, though, is that when we really stop to accept the support that's around us, the people that are positive around us, that'll uplift us, that'll help us get through these bumps in the road, if you will.
Mhm.
That is one of the factors that can help us to make sure we have good mental wellness in our life.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's that adage that we're the total of the five people that we spend the most time around. And
So true.
what does that look like in terms of possibly finding those people if we don't feel like we have them in our lives currently?
Yeah, I love that question because it is I wish I could like shout from the rooftops. Like it is so critically important that you have good supportive people in your life. And to your point, sometimes you look around, like you say, your top 5, and you're like, "Oh, this is not a good group of people." Right now, we're all in different seasons of our lives, which is okay if you have this self-awareness to go, "Wait a minute, my whomever it is, coworker group or my friend group or my family group or whomever it is not necessarily the best motivators or uplifting people right now." So if
Mhm.
that is the case for you listening to this, then your job is, like you said, to find those individuals. I strongly believe that there are really great, amazing people in this world who are here to support you in the way you need to be supported. So let's say, for example, you're a parent. There's really great, amazing parents who are going through exactly what you're going through that you can work on connecting with in the community if you don't already have that group. If you're a business owner or you're in corporate or wherever you're at in the workplace, there's really great, amazing people, maybe not the ones you work around, which is okay. But there's really great, amazing people out there who you can connect with who have similar interests to you and are positive people and uplifting. Right? Like, so it's sort of like asking yourself, where do I need that added support? Is it as a parent? Is it, through business or in the workforce? Is it, do I need better friends? Like, where is it that you need that extra support? And then making it your mission to find that group, because it really can work on elevating your mood, helping you to get through, if you will, helping you deal with a lot of stress when you have those positive people in your life.
Yeah. What does your group look like currently?
I love my group. Oh my gosh. I was just saying this the other day, but I really like at this place in my life, I'm super excited because I've been very intentional about surrounding myself with just incredibly amazing people. So I'm in a lot of different, not a lot, but I'm in a couple of amazing communities right now. And a lot of those communities are people with, we have similar interests, and we're like, how do we help the world? Like, how do we be positive to other people? How do we stay uplifted too?
Mhm.
Because things happen right in our lives, but also how do we go out and help as many people as possible? So I'm in a lot of those type of groups, and I just love it because they motivate me and inspire me and uplift me. And hopefully I do the same for them. But it is, and it's also been life changing too. Like on the personal side, these are a lot of business groups, but also personally, because some of them right now are just my friends, frankly. But also personally has helped me as a person. So I want to say I'm also practicing what I preach, to say that, like, to find those groups. They're definitely out there. Maybe it's a hobby, whatever hobby that you have. And there's people out there that are doing the same exact things as you, like, and that could just bring you some joy. Like sometimes we just need extra joy in our lives. So it's really a matter though of being more reflective and asking yourself, what do you need? And then working on finding those said groups of people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to challenge the listeners that are listening to this and are probably coming up with whatever excuse that they can in their minds right now as to why this isn't for them necessarily. That, you know what, connection and opportunity are available to us all the time, but we get to choose it. We get to be open to that connection and, just going to be honest, maybe even be brave and be the first person to make the move. I have a friend of mine who is always down for a game of pickleball. I don't play pickleball, but I bet you I could
Yeah.
text him right now and he would invite me to a pickleball game in the next 72 hours because that's just who
Yeah.
he is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that so often we get so busy and siloed in what we're doing, what our responsibilities are, that
Yes.
we miss the opportunities to pour into other people and have them pour into us in return.
Yes. Ah, there's so much research on this too, but the human connection piece is so powerful for your life. It's very underrated. There's a ton of research on it. So in my world of mental health, obviously we're looking at the research, but overall, like, it, just know that there's a lot of healing properties with positive people that are in your life. Again, whether it's in business, whether it's your hobbies, whether it's in your home life, like whomever, like whatever area that you need. And also, I think, it was last year, I believe the US Surgeon General, he actually came out with, he talked a lot about how isolation is almost as dangerous as smoking cigarettes,
Yeah.
like for our physical health. Like a lot of times we don't understand, like, it feels like it's okay, but the social isolation piece that sometimes we tend to do if we're really sad or anxious or whatever it is we're feeling is, can actually affect us not just mentally but also physically. So it's even more important that you find ways, like you said, to make sure you're connecting with other people in the
Mhm.
way that brings you joy. Also, you're, like you said, if it's pickleball, right, or whatever it is, like, find ways to connect with other people.
I appreciate you sharing that because I want to reflect a personal experience to you because I think it might be relevant to some of the listeners are either going through this or maybe have had this experience in their lives. When I've been my most down and out and thinking that the world is out to get me or that whatever my situation is won't improve, I do notice that I sequester and I don't want to say I push people away, but I definitely almost go into hiding. And I know I've talked about it a million times on this show, but when I flamed out of the baseball industry, I was on a giant sales team of probably 60 people in total. And that was when I stopped like communicating with people. I stopped going out after work. I stopped looking for reasons to create those positive connections because I was so focused on how miserable I was. I'm
Mhm.
curious, if somebody came to you and was expressing they were in a similar situation, what would be the coaching or the advice you would give someone in that position?
Yeah. So that's first of all extremely common to have that. We all go through our disappointments or our, again, unexpected things that happen in life that are hard to deal with. Or something, maybe something traumatic. So it's very common to want to isolate yourself and to say, I don't even want to leave the house, I don't want to be around anyone, I don't want to hang out with my friends, like all of that, right? So there's different levels to isolation, but if you're really at that point where you're like, I don't even think I want to communicate with people, then step one, taking a baby step, even to try your best to get outside. Maybe you're not going out on a friend's outing and having to communicate and all those sorts of things. Maybe that part is too hard, but even taking a baby step, like going out into a public place where there's other people, you don't have to communicate with anyone at all, but just to be out and around people is like a starting point. And then you work your way up to getting back to a place of, communicating with
Mhm.
others because, and I do wanna say, like, that's a tip, but when it comes to isolation, there's a lot of different reasons for isolations, and it's on a spectrum. So sometimes it does take the help of a mental health professional,
Sure.
to work through that, so I don't wanna minimize. But isolation over longer periods of time it can lead to a really dark place,
Sure.
that of course, in mental health where we don't want people to get to. I mean, you just start to be alone with your thought. It can really spiral. So instead of that, working on again being around others, positive people, is a way to work on getting out of that. But again, sometimes it takes baby steps, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and folks, I definitely found myself in a place where baby steps were all I could muster, and
Yeah.
from experience, I want to just say, don't make yourself wrong for that either, because if you find yourself in a place where just getting out of bed and getting dressed and being a functional somewhat adult for a day is a major win for you, allow yourself to feel good about that because you're still doing positive work in your life to overcome what it is you're feeling. So often I feel like we make ourselves wrong for what it is we're up to, even if because we feel like it has to look like whoever we see on Instagram at any given point. And that's mostly lies and fake and AI nowadays anyway.
It's so fake. It's so fake. Oh, I have so many stories. Yeah.
But I want to switch gears here. So you're obviously somebody who's up to a lot of things. You've written several books. You have the mental health moment. I know that you've been featured in all types of publications and you're speaking. How does somebody as busy as you prevent yourself from burning out?
Yeah. It's so funny you say that because I do juggle, I feel like a gazillion things. So I will transparently say that it has taken time to get to where I am mentally now, today, which is a way healthier place. There was a time where, and I really think not to blame anyone for my upbringing, but just the times we were in, it was just this go, go, go mentality, which we talked about before the show. But I had the same thing, a go, go, go mentality for a long time, running myself ragged, not getting enough sleep, not taking care of my physical or mental health. Like I lived that life for so long until I hit burnout when my son was around like 3 or 4. Like literally just to the point where I was like, I am so physically exhausted. Like I cannot do this anymore. And so I started to take the baby steps like I always teach other people because that's just what I could do back then, of like taking a minute, which is something I preach now to a lot of people, like
Mhm.
just taking the 60 seconds a day. And fast forward to today, self-care is so top of mind for me instead of an afterthought like it used to be. Like, yeah, I'll get to it whenever because everything else had to come first. But that's not how I think of things today. So today I'm like, okay, there's literally no way that I can do my crazy busy schedule if I'm not taking care of myself
Yes.
physically, emotionally,
Yeah.
mentally, and spiritually. So it is like almost like a 180 that I had to do. Thankfully, I'm grateful to God for that. But it is a really great place to be now, but I wasn't always at that place. So I do want to remind people of that. But yeah, it takes the self-care and the mindset to know that you have to take care of yourself, especially when we're all juggling a lot of different things. In order to be the most successful in what you're doing, you have to take care of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I appreciate you sharing that too, because that's been my case as well. And,
Yeah.
when I was in those high stress jobs in the baseball industry, I did not take care of myself. And hindsight being 2020, I still don't think I was meant to be in the baseball world forever. But I also did myself no favors because instead of getting a good night's sleep, instead of eating healthy, instead of exercising regularly, I was staying up probably till 2 in the morning most nights, doing Lord knows what,
I can relate.
consuming way too much alcohol and waking up and doing it all again the next day. And, I think we can maybe chalk that up to youthful ignorance. But now that I'm a father, I'm a husband, I have this show, I have all my other responsibilities, I notice a huge difference on days when I get up and run, even though I don't want to at 5:30 in the morning, but when I get up and run versus the days that I don't. And
Yeah.
so thank you for reflecting on that for us. I know that you've spoken about this on other podcasts as well, just the concept of taking the minute. Like, does that
Yeah.
look any particular way? Is it something prescriptive, or what does that mean for the listeners?
Yeah. Yeah, so what I mean when I say take a minute is literally each day, and this is we're all at different places in our self-care journey. So this is especially for if you're like, I don't feel like I'm where I need to be, or I'm at the starting point, which is okay. Then you start with 60 seconds. You can literally time yourself with your cell phone. And in those 60 seconds, you decide how you want to spend that minute for you. It should be something that allows you to reset, recharge your mind and body, and something that brings you joy, because for like all of us are different and what brings us joy. But it could be as simple as taking some deep breaths, which is a really underrated thing to do. If you really practice taking 60 seconds of deep breathing, you will see how tense your body is sometimes, and your mind that may be racing can just calm down for a second. It could be, if you believe in prayer, it could be, I like to drink cups of tea. So sometimes it's drink a cup of tea. I like being outside, spending time in nature. Like it could be anything for you that, again, just allows you to reset and recharge. And what that 60 seconds does over time is you are retraining your brain that you deserve to be emotionally healthy, you deserve to be happy, you deserve to have self-care, you deserve those things. So you really work on retraining your brain, and then at some point you take more than 60 seconds a day, but you start with 60 seconds.
Yeah, and we've had several guests on the show who have talked about the importance of meditation. Is this leading
Yes.
up to that?
Yes. If that works for you, I know a lot of people I've talked to about meditation. That's something I do myself as well, but have said, "Oh, I feel almost too wound up and it's hard for me to completely stop what I'm thinking." But sometimes meditation is like a practice that you can uh extend the time. Like you may start with the 60 seconds and then you extend your time to a couple minutes, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. You don't have to do necessarily like 30 minutes or an hour of meditation, but yes, it's those types of things, like really working on being more in the present moment, working on your mindfulness, which is again focusing on the present moment. And meditation is one of those things that you can try as well. It could literally be a 1 minute meditation as well.
Yeah, so good. And I know people that do jumping jacks or push-ups, or um,
Yes.
I even know someone who's pretty crazy who will hit a plank several times a day in the middle of the day. I
So good. I love that. I need to do that.
and it doesn't have to look any particular way, folks. But what she's saying is just to make sure it's something for you that you enjoy and that can
Yes.
reground yourself.
Yes. Yes. And it's so interesting because when I first started it, like after a while, like because you've trained your brain so much, you will look for moments to take a minute. Like it
Mhm.
just now it's so automatic, but in the beginning, your brain starts to be like, "Oh wait, I need to like, take it down a notch," or physically, I need to like take some deep breaths. So it's really fascinating how that works.
I love that. I love that. And, just notice folks as you begin to implement the minute, like notice how your state changes. And, that's going to give you clues that whatever you're doing is working. It could be just you notice your shoulders drop, or maybe it's easier to take a fuller breath than you were before. Or, one of my favorite is to just go out. I can't do this in the winter here in Ohio, but I do like to
Oh,
go outside and barefoot, just stand in the grass and just
that's so good.
feel the sun on my neck and shoulders and just be in the moment as best I can. I'm on the phone a lot during the day, answering emails, jumping from meeting to meeting, and sometimes I'll only get like 90 seconds out of my whole day to do that, but that little bit makes a difference. And so
It does.
can't recommend this enough for anybody listening. I want to ask you about this. So, another thing that gets thrown around a lot in the personal development space is the concept of gratitude. And I feel like what we're discussing today isn't that far of a leap from starting with a mindfulness practice, finding grounding rituals, but also the act of practicing gratitude. And we've spoken about it with other guests on the show, but haven't really delved into maybe why it's effective. I'm curious if you have any answers for that.
Yeah. So there's actually research on it. So I am a huge fan of gratitude as a practice. But yeah, there's actually research on it of how it can help you physically and emotionally and mentally because practicing gratitude, of course, it doesn't make all your problems go away. If only we had the magic wand. But what it does do mentally for you is it allows you to temporarily have some relief from the problems that you're dealing with and to
Hmm.
focus on some positivity that is happening in your life. For a lot of us, we tend to forget like how blessed we are and like how many things we have to be grateful for because we're just sometimes just caught up in the day to day or what's going on in the news or what's happening on social media. Like it's a lot to take in sometimes.
Yeah.
But I am a huge fan of suggesting to people to have some sort of gratitude practice, which can look different depending on what you like. My gratitude practice is, which I started a couple years ago when I made some changes to my morning routine because I originally would just wake up and go straight to my emails within like 30 seconds of waking up. Highly would not recommend that. But instead, now I start with a gratitude practice, which is basically as soon as I wake up, I think of one unique thing that I'm grateful for. So it's usually something that happened within the last couple of days or about to happen like a couple of days from the day I wake up. So about a week span. So I keep it current. And that's been, I don't know, probably maybe 2 years or so that I started that practice. And there's never been a day when I've woken up and I'm like, I don't have anything to be grateful for today. And so what that does though, and that's just one example. Like you can do gratitude journals, you can write down 3 things you're grateful for, like whatever it is that works for you. But what that does over time is it kind of secretly tricks your mind into finding things during your day to be grateful for because you know you're going to have to either write it down or think about it. And it puts a lot of things into perspective sometimes when you really take note of all that you have to be grateful for, because there's a lot that we have to be grateful for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't remember where I read it or heard it, but basically the idea that our minds are echo chambers and whatever thoughts we allow to persist are just going to continue to build and
Oh,
reverberate
yeah.
and grow bigger and bigger and actually affect our physical well-being as well as our
Yes.
mental well-being.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Um and when you think about like physically, the just the inflammation in your body, when you think about cortisol levels, when you think about your blood pressure, like there's a lot going on in our bodies, of course, physically, and some of it we actually can control when we're controlling our breathing, when we're doing
Mhm.
gratitude practices. So again, this is not only mental health benefits, but also your physical health as well.
Yeah. And folks, like if you're listening to this and any of this sounds woo-woo to you, if you have ever been so stressed out that you've gotten a headache, or if you've ever been so angry that you can feel your chest or maybe your throat tightening up, those are perfect examples of what we're describing here, is how what we focus on is actually going to manifest itself as a version of reality for ourselves, both in our minds and in our bodies. So why don't we take the opportunity, as foreign as it might feel, but to practice instilling thoughts that are going to help us lead more fulfilling lives. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's very true. I've met many people who have had no, like they've gone to the doctor, no medical condition that the doctors found, but because of their stress level, like you said, it was coming out physically. So they were having headaches, backaches, stomach aches, like all sorts of chronic pain with no medical causes. And the physician would say, hey, after doing a ton of tests, they would say, this is something more mental health based that's causing all these physical issues in your body. And then that person, let's say, would go to therapy and deal with the mental health things, that depression, anxiety, or whatever it is that they were dealing with, or trauma, and would start to have the relief physically in their bodies because
yep.
they were dealing with the thoughts that were just like you said, like echo chamber. So the thoughts that just kept, just the rumination and just the constant thinking, and which leads to more stress in your body. So that's always been fascinating to me, just how again we can literally make ourselves sick sometimes by not dealing with our mental health concerns that we may have.
Yeah. Yeah. And at risk of, you know, beating a dead horse on this one, when I left the baseball industry, I literally left Yankee Stadium in a state of disgrace, feeling horrible about myself. But I had been under so much stress for so long that I wasn't allowing myself to escape through any type of healthy practices or rituals or behaviors, that I actually went straight from Yankee Stadium to NYU Langone Medical Center in Manhattan and ended up being there for almost 9 days. And
Yeah.
similar to what you're describing, they ran every single test, but couldn't find anything actually wrong with me. But I had a 105-degree fever, and they kept me overnight because they thought it could be the end for me because my body was just not acting normally. And so that's an extreme example, folks, like for what's possible. But you know safe to say, like, I'm in a much better place now, and I hope anybody who has ever had any issues with these types of things, are either able to start implementing some of these changes or find a mental health professional if need be. I'm
Yeah.
curious, maybe since we've gone there, when should somebody reach out for professional help?
Yeah. So totally normal to have a bad day, of course, or be anxious about different situations. But when it starts to happen either so intensely that you are like, I can't take it anymore, or maybe it's milder, but it's a longer period, like like these, let's say it's depression or sadness, and it's happening week after week after week, you definitely want to reach out to a mental health professional. I do want to say also, though, that you don't always have to wait until things are so bad to go to a mental health professional. You can also check in with a
Mhm.
mental health professional and just say, hey, like, there's some things that are going on right now. I'm not really sure how to handle it. Almost, I love prevention more than I love intervention. So when you
Sure.
think of doing things, learning coping skills, getting through just some tough times sometimes, that's okay too. before it gets to the point where it's a lot more severe. But definitely, yeah, after, especially when it comes to, again, anxiety, depression type of symptoms, after like a couple weeks, that gets more into some red flag areas.
Yep. Folks, just check in with yourselves. Obviously, you're going to know yourself better than anybody else will. And I think more importantly, there's absolutely no shame in reaching out to a professional if need be. That's what they are there for, quite literally.
Yes.
So, to switch gears and hopefully end on a bit of a higher note, obviously we've talked about burnout, we've talked about mental health. Let's talk about some of the good stuff that can come from this type of work. Like, I feel like we talk a lot about joy, and maybe joy is this thing that we're always pursuing, but maybe are making wrong for some reason. But what do you feel like allows people to experience more of that bliss, that joy in their work lives or otherwise?
Yeah. I think it really starts with, and it's not always the easiest thing to do, but it starts with giving yourself permission to
Yeah.
have joy in your life. And so I'll say, just throughout my career, meeting thousands and thousands of people from all different walks of life, one of the themes that I've heard most common is that people are struggling with either forgiving someone else for something that they did to them, or they're struggling with forgiving themselves and dealing with some self-love issues. So one of those two things could be almost blocking your ability to be able to fully experience joy in your life. But the good news is, with time, you
Yep.
can work on giving yourself permission to heal and giving yourself permission to experience joy, because you are allowed to have joy. The other thing I want to say about joy, and this is something I dealt with, well, of course, during a global pandemic, because why not? 2020, I had a, it's just the timing of things sometimes in your life, you're like, wait, what? But nonetheless, 2020 was a even harder year for me, because in the midst of all of that, the pandemic brought, I also lost a very close mentor of mine. Just unbelievable amount of grief. It was extremely difficult and very dark, but I also reminded myself that even through the grief process, that I was still allowed to have moments of joy, because it's really easy to solely focus on grief or loss, or whatever it is that may be a darker time in our life, and not realize that we can still have pockets of joy even during those times as well. It's easy to have joy when you're having a great day, or having a great
Of
period in your
course.
life, but it's the harder times, is still reminding yourself you're allowed to have joy during that time as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm obviously sorry that you lost somebody during that time. Um, something that has supported me, and I hope would support the listeners as well, is just the reframe of how is this happening for me? Maybe that
Yes.
doesn't get you all the way to joy, but at least it gets you in the driver's seat of possibility and opening yourself up to more than just, man, this current set of circumstances suck. And
Hmm.
I would even challenge anybody listening to this, write a list of 50 ways. I mean, we all went through the pandemic. 50 ways the pandemic happened for me. It's something that I've challenged a
Mm,
couple of people to do, and it's really opened up a lot. And
that's good.
listen, I would never do the pandemic again. I'm sure no one,
Me either. We can just skip on over that.
I'm sure no one
Skip
else
that
would,
part. No.
but like I can point to a lot of things that absolutely would not have happened if the pandemic had not happened. And for me, that includes meeting my wife. And
Oh.
that's a whole other podcast episode.
Yeah.
But I think you can agree that there are opportunities to feel something other
Yeah.
than pain and misery if we allow ourselves to.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. Like, the reframe is such a, oh, it's such a powerful tool. It's not always easy to do. That's something actually that well, in what we call cognitive behavioral therapy. That's a huge tool. Anyhow, that's a specific type of therapy to work on your thoughts and your behaviors and work on reframing things. It's very powerful. It's super useful when you really can work on that. And just like you said, it's the same. Yeah, it's very similar. Like having the gratitude and having the joy in the moments that are really hard for us to. Good.
What brings you joy currently?
Oh, so many things. What brings you joy? Okay, so I would definitely say my amazing 12-year-old son. He's so wonderful. I just love being his mom. That brings me a lot of joy. Spending time with my family. Also spending time in nature
Mhm.
calms me down because there's 500
Yep.
things going on. So that's definitely my grounding place. Doing CrossFit brings me joy. Cooking when I have time brings me joy. So and just like right now, like I said, I'm just around really amazing people who are doing really cool things in the world. So that brings me a lot of joy as well.
I love it. I love it. And
Yeah.
I felt your entire aura shift as you began to share that. And folks, follow Dr. Nekeshia's example and practice that for yourself. Just what brings you joy and just see how it shifts your
Yeah.
mood.
Yeah.
I want to make sure folks know where to continue the conversation with you offline and also catch any of your awesome content that's out there and also grab some of your books. Where can folks connect with you off of this show?
Yeah. The best place is my website. It's drnekeshiahammond.com. So it's DRNEKESHIA Hammond.com or on social media at Dr. Nekesha Hammond.
Awesome. And as always, folks, we will make sure all of Dr. Nekeshia's info will be made readily available in the show notes anywhere you are catching this podcast episode, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, absolutely anywhere. So don't be a stranger, reach out, give yourself the gift of these tools so that you can continue to create the life of your dreams. That's what the show is all about. And we wanted to have her on the show today so that we can do just that. And one of the very last things I want to ask you, and this is something I ask everybody, right in line with what we've been talking about today. What are you acknowledging yourself for today?
Ooh. Oh, that's good. Let's see. What am I acknowledging myself for today? I have been really in a state of reflection about just all the changes that we talked about on this podcast and just I'm in a very heavy state of gratitude. I'm really happy for my spiritual growth and also just all the other areas of growth right now. So yeah, I would say I acknowledge just being at a good mental place that I wish I was in a while back, but nonetheless, I'm happy that I'm here now.
No, absolutely. And I acknowledge you for being a leader, being a light, showing people the way, like actually reaching back behind you and grabbing people to bring them up to your level so that they can live happier, healthier, more fulfilled lives. And truly, it's been wonderful having you on the show today. And I just want to thank you again for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And folks, as always, this has been another episode of your Inside Track to Success. We will catch you next week with another amazing guest or message. We'll see you then.